up to about 5 or 6 years ago, most of the focus was on historic buildings and conversion and things like that. But we wanted to take a lot of the lessons we learned from historic buildings into new build. In our designs, we try and pick up on the history of the site, the ley lines in the ground, and look at the vernacular architecture and how that's all put together. The site we're standing in today, Manningtree, is our third new build development. All of them we've used timber frame for the houses. I think there's a real tradition in East Anglia for timber frame, and that's what we've always used. For me, I've always detailed in timber frame, and actually as soon as we started doing new build housing, we did it in timber frame, and there are lots of really good reasons for doing that. I think we like the fact that the timber frame goes up really quickly, so you get the roof on really quickly so that you can start fitting out as you're building up on the outside, so essentially your program is quicker. With traditional build, then you might have a really long period of rain, and essentially the structure can become soaked, so that then actually when you've got the roof on, you then need to spend a long time drying it out before you can fit out. So from that point of view, timber is really practical. There's loads of timber frame companies out there as well who can provide timber frame, and recently we did kind of do a review of have we made the right decision using timber frame, and we looked at the pros and cons between block work and concrete and timber frame, and actually cost-wise there wasn't that much in it, but in terms of moving forward quickly and efficiently, timber seemed to be a big advantage to us. And when you look at what else is happening in Europe, in Scotland I think is more than 90% of the homes are timber frame. Scandinavia I think is even more than that, and that seems to be the general direction of travel. But actually historically timber frame has been going for hundreds of years. I live in an 18th century cottage which is timber frame, and that timber frame is still standing. So there might be some misconceptions that timber frame is new or short-lived, but actually timber frame is something that's been happening for generations and generations, and continuing that tradition is something we really like to do. There are loads of benefits, I think, from timber. There's more room for insulation is one thing, so I think that's probably one of the reasons the Scandinavians use timber frame. It's colder in Scandinavia, so you want more room for insulation. So as the building regs get tougher and tougher, which they will over time, then actually timber frame, you've got another 100 mil or so of room to fit insulation, so you can make the house more thermally efficient. If all your walls are 100 mil thicker, that might not seem very much, but on a development of a few hundred homes, that might be the difference between another couple of houses on the site. So actually, the more efficiently you can build, the better it's got to be. I think there's a lot of talk about transitioning to timber, but actually timber's been here for a long time, and it seems bizarre to me that so many developers are not using timber, because it is a proper English tradition and it allows you to build quickly and efficiently, and it's much more environmentally friendly because you're essentially absorbing carbon. So you're cutting down trees, but you're growing new trees which are absorbing carbon, and then those trees get cut down and put into houses. So rather than burning carbon to make a house, you're actually storing it and reducing the amount of carbon in the environment. So what could be better than that? Occasionally there's some nervousness about timber frame just because people don't understand, and actually this is our third development. There's been no issues with insurance, there's been no issues with build quality because of it. I think it's well received. People appreciate the fact that it's storing carbon and it's an environmentally friendly way to go. As long as you explain the rationale to purchasers, if they ask, because some people don't really care, but if they ask, then you just need to have all the facts at your fingertips. And again, the fact that more than 90% of homes in Scotland and most of Europe is building in timber frame, it's the obvious solution. In all of our developments, we use timber frame for homes, and it's got a nice warmth and story and logic and history to building in timber frame, which I think is really important in all our developments, is picking up on the heritage of a site. Even if it's a greenfield site, there will be things in there that you can pick up. So we look really closely at the vernacular details, and it's not just the frame that we build in timber, but actually the door surrounds, we build them in timber, because although you can get plastic versions, the scale and proportions are never right. And they don't have, you can't just see the grain running through it. And it's the same with our eaves details. We've got some cornices, we've got some dental details, and we've got exposed rafter feet. And we do that all in timber because it's the only way you get that traditional detail. And for us, tradition is really important. And actually, traditional detailing and designs, whether it's timber frame or timber cornices, they've stood the test of time for generation after generation. So actually using that is, is really nice, and it's following on and continuing traditions from the past. Over time, our relationship with timber is going to be enhanced. I think it's working really well for new homes, and that's something we want to continue to do. There are quirks of using timber frame that you need to understand, like the timber frame will shrink a little bit, so you need to allow some expansion around the windows as it settles, but that's such a small quirk that you have to deal with. The huge advantages of using timber frame makes that easily overcomable. We can see so many benefits from it, and we're sticking with it. Moving forward, we like to explore using timber frame in larger structures and apartment blocks and taller buildings, and just see how that could work, because I think the use of timber frame is well received by purchasers because they can see the environmental benefits of it and the fact you can fit more insulation in. So trying to take all those advantages to taller structures, I think, would be a really interesting challenge that we'd like to start looking at. So I think the use of structural timber in the UK is going to increase over time. You just need to look at what's happening in other countries in Europe and how focused they are on timber frame. Then it does seem a slightly kind of Stone Age process to be building a blockwork again. So I think more awareness of the benefits of timber and how the advantages of it and the eco credentials of it is really key. And I think at the moment, building regs is really much focused on energy usage rather than the amount of energy that goes into building a home. And actually, when that starts to be factored in, timber frame is a great starting point because you're absorbing carbon rather than burning it. So I think at some point, as regulations change over the years, there's going to be, I think everyone's going to be pushed towards timber frame because everyone will see the benefit of it. So actually being on that path of timber frame early is going to really help deal with changes in the building regulations as they come across in future years. For anyone who's thinking of going over to timber frame, I think it's really important to meet a number of timber frame suppliers, work with some architects who worked with timber frame before so that they understand the quirks and technicalities of timber frame, but actually with partnering with the right timber frame suppliers, getting the right consultants on board, then people will begin to see these huge advantages of moving to timber frame. So I don't think it's nothing scary. I mean, most of it is pretty much the same as a normal house. There are just some quirks that need to be understood, and once you understand that, there's no real issues at all. Benefits, not problems.